I don't know about you, but I find it really hard to navigate just the world we're living in right now. It's just hard.
It's been a lot in a short period of time. And I think about these things a lot, and I also see clients in the clinic who are talking about so many of the recent events that have occurred that have been catastrophic and devastating and impacted people in so many different ways. And on the one hand, I almost feel like I'm in a bit of a privileged position because, I mean, part of the work of being a psychologist is we learn how to kind of build that skin that buffers us when we hear so much negativity and so much trauma and so much hardship that people are going through. But on the other hand, I hear a lot of it and it's heavy.
So I feel like it's very easy to slip into despair, especially when the world feels so overwhelming right now. So my question is, how do we get out of despair without being in denial about what's going on?
Ooh. Look, I think this is where the idea of dialectics comes in. I can't remember if we've spoken about dialectics before.
But I like it.
All right. Dialectics comes from the ancient Greeks, as a lot of things do.
Shout
I might
out
have
the
mentioned that on the
Greeks.
podcast
Yeah.
before. But it's essentially the idea that two things that seem to be opposite can both be true at the same time.
I love that.
And so when we think about the world as it is at the moment, we say on the one hand, there are awful things happening. There are sad things happening. There is grief. There is crime. There is collective hate. You know, we're experiencing a lot of awful things in the world right now. And on the other hand, there's a lot of good. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of compassion. There's a lot of positive things that are happening in the world and people showing up in really positive ways. And so when we feel caught in the bind, it's important for us to give space emotionally for both.
Yes.
It's hard, it's painful, and it's good, and there's hope. We don't want to fall into the trap of getting stuck in one or the other. If we get stuck in how awful things are, we'll get really stuck in that, and that can lead to depression and all sorts of things. On the flip side, we don't want to bury our head in the sand. We don't want to be in denial, as you said, and just be like, you know what? Yes, okay, everything's good. Everything's fine. It'll all be okay. Look at what's happening. You know, yes, we want to acknowledge that, but we've got to give room for both.
Yeah, I love this. Like, honestly, if I could put my slogan on a t-shirt, it would be, it's always both. You know, because it really is. And I think so often we can judge ourselves for the process we're going through. You know, we might be in the really deep depths of grief, but we see other people in joy and happiness. And then we feel all these things like anger or jealousy or judging them for their experience. But I think if we can all come to the table with, okay, everyone has their own beautiful processes and I'm going to honor where I'm at and I'm going to honor where that person is at, man, this world would be such a different place.
I agree.
Who offers the best advice in your family? Is it you? Play the Medibank Family Roast to find out. A card game designed to get families connecting and talking. Because when the bonds of family are stronger, Australia is stronger. So get around the dinner table, a tasty conversation is about to be served. Search Medibank Family Roast. Live better with Medibank.
The other way we can try and hold on to this idea of a dialectic is thinking about, in any given situation, there are elements of that situation that are out of my control. I can't do anything about them. I can't change them. I work to accept them for what they are. So on the one hand, there are always elements of a situation that I need to try and accept. However, there are also always elements that I do have agency over, that I can change and that I can control. And so when we feel like we are perhaps stuck in those helpless and hopeless feelings, it's important for us to acknowledge that yes, on the one hand, certain things are out of our control, and at the same time, there are actions that we can take. And so for anyone listening to this episode, I imagine if you clicked on it, you're feeling the heaviness of the world, but you also want to know what you can do, both for yourself and perhaps for the world. This is where we start to think about what is in my control and how can I take some action. And one of the most meaningful ways for ourselves that we can feel like we're taking some action is taking action on a grassroots level, not necessarily thinking about the biggest problems in the world and how we can solve things on a global level, but how can I work towards helping progress change in my local backyard.
I love that, because I think it does kind of what you're talking about around, it helps us to activate more hope, because we're noticing, oh, my actions are creating good in the world.
And if we can see the change, and I'm going to use the example of a soup kitchen. If you can see the impact that it has when you give someone who's in need food or a hot meal or a conversation, when you see that change, you feel more motivated to continue doing that versus sometimes when we might feel like the problem is so big that we can't actually see the impact or the change that our actions are having.
Yeah, so true.
The other thing I want to suggest to people, if you're listening along and you are interested in, what can I do? How can I make a change? Think about what's going to be meaningful for you on a personal level, because that is certainly going to help the cause that you're contributing to. But also spend a bit of time looking into what actually makes a meaningful impact on an outcomes level, right? So I'm going to give you an example. I read this book. It's called Doing Good Better. Highly recommend it.
I haven't heard of it.
Highly, highly recommend it. These guys talk about essentially how you can contribute in more effective ways if you want to be contributing in the world. And they talk about this example in Africa where the goal was to improve school attendance and education. And so one of the kind of ways in which people thought they could help was by sending resources, textbooks and school supplies, and making sure there were teachers available. But they weren't finding that this was actually having the outcome that they hoped for. And so they did all this research, and actually what they found had the most impact was deworming tablets.
What?
Yeah. So children were missing school because they were unwell. And it was a really super cost-effective way. It was actually quite cheap to, through schools, give deworming tablets. And it meant that there was a significant increase in the amount of time kids actually spent at school. And they saw that this actually had direct links to children's educational outcomes.
Wow, I've never heard of that.
Yeah. So I want to share this story because it's not always the sexy way of contributing that actually makes the biggest impact. So I'd encourage people to spend time thinking about what can you do, but also what's going to have the impact.
I find as well a really great tool to use as well is practicing gratitude. Now, I used to be the type of person where people would be like, just be grateful and practice gratitude. And I would genuinely eye roll. I'm like, oh, this gratitude stuff, does this actually work? But then that's my own judgment from actually leaning into what could actually be effective. So I find gratitude, 3 things I'm grateful for. If sometimes that's hard, just one thing you're grateful for makes such a big difference. Anastasia, what should people be taking away from this episode?
Well, first of all, if you're feeling like the world is really heavy right now, you're not alone. Second, remember that while there are some really sad and hard things happening in the world, there are also some really good and positive things happening as well. Third, choose to read the good news stories, acupuncture for elephants and the sorts, along with keeping informed about the state of the world. And lastly, take action. Choose a cause that feels meaningful to you, that you care about, and take one small step in the direction of contributing to it in a meaningful way.